My name is Erek Slater. I am one of the founding members of Transit Workers Unite. We're a group of transit workers that are both in unions. A few of us are not in unions, but we support strongly our unions. We're trying to encourage those unions and the workers in them to work together, to go public, and to win some of our demands. We're here at a CTA rail station, also a bus depot on the north side of Chicago, and this is a lot of the buses out of my bus garage in North Park come here on this work location. So some of the divides we have are between rail and the bus, between maintenance and frontline bus operators, men and women, black and white. All those things are dividing us, and we're an organization which is explicitly trying to unite us among transit workers in our issues, which are together as a group. We're trying to, this is our second event that we've done. We're trying to do this every month. We did the last one in the Loop of Chicago, where we're trying to encourage rank and file workers to speak out. We're trying to encourage our unions to mobilize our members, not just active members, retired members, people who've been unjustly fired, that were a huge force, tens of thousands of workers in just Chicago alone, and that's just among the CTA workers. The people driving the bus, the maintenance workers, the rail workers, the track men and women. They're the people who take safety extremely seriously. We're not only experts here of public transportation, we're also leaders of communities and leaders of family back at home. And those are the people who are not making the decisions. So when I say they, it's the Chicago Transit Authority Board, it's the Regional Transportation Authority, it's the city administration, it's the government of Illinois, etc., that make these decisions without us, on our backs, against our will. What the passengers care about, what the public cares about, safety, making sure that these trains, which show 1,000 people on them, the buses, each of them have sometimes over 100 people on them in the middle of the downtown area, all over the city, getting to the important things that we need in culture, from schools, and they treat us with such disrespect in the garage.
Right behind us on the railroad tracks, you got a track gang of maybe 20 trackmen, track laborers, and signal maintainers, all union. But the trackmen are paid very low, and they do very dangerous work. The Brotherhood of Maintenance Away Employees Division of the Teamsters, we're not in that union, but they published a report recently, basically an abstract, of a scientific analysis of how track workers have experienced the most disease and most injuries of any workers on any railroad. And they are exposed to chemicals, they are doing repetitive motions, and all of this is part of the job. But when it comes to compensation and benefits, we need to step it up, and it happened to be an issue that our union president, Ken Franklin, Local 308, is like, this is a big issue because our trackmen are making so little for doing so much and being full-time. So this is also a big deal, making sure that these hard-working brothers and sisters are safe and healthy. One of the biggest safety issues for trainmen, the people that operate the trains, is dealing with what's called disturbances. And that's a mild word for shootouts, arguments with weapons, being threatened, with their lives being threatened. These types of things, we don't have weapons, we're not allowed to carry weapons. It's very hard to get security on time because we have to be on the move. We have to run the trains on time. And sometimes what happens is that the way our trains are constructed, to maximize getting passengers on them, the area where we operate the trains is also open to the public on the rear car. So if we're in the head car operating the train, the area where we operate is partially open to the public in the rear car. the rear car is a place where a lot of people relieve themselves. You'll find drugs back there, food back there, all kinds of garbage. They're very unsanitary and smelly. So when the operator has to take the train back the other way, they have to deal with that. So yes, we have car servicers that will help mop it up, but even they are dealing with other messes. So it's not always easy to get done thoroughly. The company has a process for cleaning the entire train from top to bottom. Sometimes that for budget cutting reasons isn't done enough, and so our passengers will complain about foul odors as well as our operators.
One of the main problems on the bus side is the scheduling. And if they don't give enough time at the terminus, the end of the bus, then that means that you're going to have a very tired driver. You're going to have someone trying to go faster and faster just to make up that time. And they'll be cutting corners. A few years back, we had a rail car that ran up onto the airport area. And fortunately, no one was killed. But many were questioning the amount of sleep that operator had, and it led to some changes in the amount of time. But still, as we speak right now, you get a minimum of 8 hours to get off your run, which may be at 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever. Go home, get your uniform off, rest, right? Try to, get your mind away from all the stuff you just did at work, and then get back in time to be able to get to work at least a half an hour early. Because if you are not trying to get there half an hour early, you're going to get in traffic or whatever, and you're going to get a miss, and you're going to get fired really quick in this company. So you may have 4 hours. What we see is a shrinking of our working environment. So we see a speed up of the work. Many workers see this, but we literally see it, a speed up on these buses. I was just talking to a worker. We're here at the Howard Terminal. The 22 Clark comes out of this street, and we don't have proper bathroom facilities at the south. We don't have enough time to be able to use the bathroom. They're squeezing, and so that's what we feel. Month after month, year after year, squeezing of these working conditions. So it's very hard to do things like safety, which is number one, right? We do an amazing job, no doubt about it. Courtesy and kindness towards the public and the passenger. When you feel squeezed and race down that street, that's what we see as their priorities, not the safety of the public, the working and living conditions of the actual experts who do the work. So the people who do the work are not making the decisions about the route, about how much time is at the end, where it goes. It's not the public. It's certainly not the experts, the people who are doing the work, and that's the main problem. So that's why you see these atrocious things. That how could this possibly happen? That you have a bus operator who holds 100 people's lives in their hands, going through the center of the city, right, with all these taxi cabs. So it's amazing work, and we're like holding it like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. It's inhuman, and it's also a tribute to humanity that we're able to do it. But over time, I've been doing this 13 years. People have been doing this 20, 30 years. It beats your body down, and they just throw us away like badge numbers. And that's what we're trying to get out to the public. That this is not necessary. This is a public service for the public, and they should be treating us with respect and dignity. But as bus operators, we're directly talking to passengers every day. And in many of our experiences, there's some people that are difficult, but many people are thankful and appreciative, or at least respectful of the hard work that we do. We get a lot of difficulty, but there's many, many people who give us respect. So that just happens directly, but there's no organized way of doing it. In my opinion, we should start to be organizing the unions to be able to receive those phone calls. Right now, the Chicago Transit Authority or the government offices will get it, and if you're lucky, if they really know their bureaucracy, maybe a formal commendation can come in, but we get thousands and thousands of commendations from passengers in just a few years, and we might get one or two. Now, they're certainly ready to fire us very quickly if someone didn't like us, right? There's so much racism, sexism that we have to deal with on the bus as frontline transit workers. And a lot of the frustration, many of them legitimate, of the passengers get on, and when they see something they don't like, they call in on us, and management is very clear and very fast to go after and threaten our livelihood over that, and oftentimes without any evidence. So that's a major concern we have, and we want to ask the passengers and the public, instead of coming after the frontline transit workers, try going to the union. Try speaking directly to the workers' organization, especially, maybe have a community meeting with, the leadership or the ranks of workers and say, hey, this is some of the problems we're having. How can we work this out? As opposed to trying to get that worker fired. And you don't understand what that worker's dealing with. You don't understand that he hadn't had a pee break in 2 hours. You haven't understand that, or she has children at home and management's forcing them to be at work when they're not allowed, to fire them even when they're trying to help their family, which is many of the conditions. I'm a shop steward. I see this every week where a leader of the family, men and women, are they have family obligations to their elders, to their children, and the management says, well, we have an absenteeism problem, so we can't give you a day off without pay. Or they've made it so that only 4 misses within a year time. Imagine that if you're a minute late, 60 seconds late, 4 times in a year in your entire career, every year, they're going to try to fire you. And thousands of workers have been fired for this issue, which has nothing to do with safety. Well, over the last 5 to 10 years, the Chicago Transit Authority has taken on a lot of the management techniques in for-profit companies, and they said this is the new CTA, and they went on a war against the workers for what they call absenteeism, excessive absenteeism. And so what before, I started about 13 years ago before this turn and what would happen is, I would call the garage, I'd be coming a few minutes late maybe, or like that, and I'd call the clerk and I'd say, hey, I'll be right there. And it's a 10-4, as long as the bus is coming out at the proper time, obviously, you don't want to do this all the time, but it was a little bit more respectful, and the people were able to treat each other with respect. And now it's all done with computer systems. You have to tap your badge, and there's no wiggle room for the necessities of home life, of your family life. There's no about the emergencies that you may have, or even if you get, literally, if you get your car banged in on your way over here, and you come to the manager and say, hey, I got a police report, I've got a report from everything, and it doesn't matter, it says here in the rules, even if it's not your fault and you can prove it, we can still discipline you for that. And they're going way overboard. It's thousands of workers who've been fired. Here, at this terminal right here, we have a major problem where there's a global positioning system in space that is coming down on each one of these buses, and there's a, quote, we call it a bubble, a circle around this terminal, and if you pick up somebody here and they're like running down here from the train trying to make a connection to the buses, like, wait, bus driver, wait for me. But you're like, well, if I get more than 30% late within a 2-week period, they're going to give me a procedural violation, and procedural violation can really quickly march up to firing you. So you are pit against the passenger who legitimately just wants you to slow down and stop for a second and pick them up. But you're like, sorry, I can't. If I stop and pick you up, 1,000 people might have to wait. But not only that, I may not get a break at the end. And I need that break. It's a human need to be able to just cool yourself down, right? And be able to not think about the extreme complexity, extreme danger that you've just gone through safely and well. And with courtesy, and then get back, get your head straight and ready to go and to face with people with a smile, and that's, we need that. It's not an extra. It's something that's needed for safety. And I just say another thing. It's related to safety, is time off. We're leaders of families. We have children, or for older, we have grandkids. Where almost everybody who's making this union job is protecting a family, leading a family. So we have obligations. If you get up in the morning and you didn't get a good night's sleep, you need to be able to say to your boss, look, I'll come in tomorrow, but I need a personal day. Many of the issues are much more serious, like you're dealing with an emergency in your family, and they don't have the time for you to say, either get here or we'll find somebody else. And at a certain point, that impacts the public directly. Basically, they're cost-cutting measures. They're running the transit agencies as like a for-profit or company. And so they're coming out of business school and squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. But the problem is that's not only hurting our life and our families, it's also hurting the safety of the public. And that's one of the main things we're trying to bring attention to and encourage other workers to speak out in an organized fashion to do so.
So if you're part-time, you're stuck at 32 hours, but you can do overtime over that as per our agreement. If you're full-time, you're definitely getting your 40 hours and more, especially in scheduled operations, bus and rail. It's straight time, so your 8 hours, your 9 hours, you're going over that 8 isn't overtime, but your 40, your total, right? Yeah. then it's an overtime, but it's not overtime if you did 11 hours.
I know as a bus operator, but transit workers are different. In Chicago, you're required to be 21 years or older. You're required to have a commercial driver's license, pass some exams. You're required to have a Class B, air brakes endorsement, passenger endorsement. You're supposed to you have to have a driving abstract, which is your record of driving, and you have to pass a whole lot of background checks, drug tests, all kinds of things. We are the cleanest of the clean. And then once you get hired, you're in a 5-month probation. 3 strikes, you're out. Right? It's like being in prison. It really is for 5 months, and if you survive that, it's like basic training, and it really feels like a combative environment. And then of course you're on. At any moment you could get drug tested, right? Someone hits your bus. You didn't do it, right? And they say, well, we're going to have to do a drug test for you because you were involved in a collision. There's 13 cameras on the bus. 13 cameras on the bus at any given moment. There's a server rack behind the bus, which is like the size of a major grocery store or city block on each one of these buses that are surveillancing not just, of course, us, but the working class communities. They're pointed outside the bus, inside the bus, directly at the face of the bus driver. Also, the rail workers have the same thing, a camera facing you all the time. So we are among the most surveillanced people in the world. Okay, so contract negotiations haven't started yet, and they should shortly. And at least my union has not yet compiled a formal list of our issues, but I can just informally talk about that. I'm not trying to say I speak for everybody. In the previous contract, we did this survey, and I'm pretty confident a lot of them will be the same. It's time off, personal days. We have a sick book policy, but you get disciplined when you get sick for no fault at your own. That needs to be lessened. Perhaps a policy which is less strict about what we call misses. So if we had a tardy policy, any of these things to allow us to have some more time to just concentrate on safety, not all this other stuff, this bureaucracy that supposedly saves money. One of the main things that we're concerned about is safety as bus operators, and obviously also train workers and maintenance workers, is safety with dealing directly with the public. In my view, some of the directly related to that is the fare. So as we talked about earlier, we're required to request the fare through our work rules, and this puts us at odds with someone who may not have the fare, and this sometimes can create violence. So it's directly in workers' interest to work with passenger groups, community groups, and everyone who gets on the bus to lower the fare. And that's something that we can have as a demand as our union to be in solidarity with the people who get on our buses and trains. There's many other issues. One, of course, is the scheduling. One issue is we can contractually get more control. Right now, I'm a shop steward, and I help the workers to pick their runs every season. And as many people take public transportation will know, the schedule changes on a seasonal basis. So we schedule that, we work the work, but we don't make the schedules. So the Chicago Transit Authority doesn't even give the schedules to the union until a week before we actually pick. So instead of that, the reverse is possible. The reverse is where teams of workers working with their union, with passengers and the public, can do their routes. So we're looking here at the 22 Clark or the 147 or the 201 here. The workers have been here for a couple years. Why aren't we the ones who make the schedules? Why don't we meet with the public directly and decide how frequently the service, how far it'll be, the details which only we are experts as. It's the frontline workers and the passengers are the only people who really know the streets, and we're the ones who should be making the decisions. So those are some of the demands. Of course, healthcare. I can't go without mentioning that we had massive lessening of our increasing of our healthcare costs since the 2012 agreement. We're very frustrated at that because much of us got the job because we have a family, and those are some of the main things that we face. You think you get a salary that's this much, but it turns out that by the time you've dealt with all of your expenses, you're really not making much more than any other worker in the city. And another issue I would bring up is what we call swings. Many of the workers, especially here on the north side where I do my work, a lot of workers live on the south side or the west side, and so they have a long commute in their private cars to get to their work location. They have to be on time, like I said before. They have to be very disciplined. But once we get there, we may get a 3-hour shift, right? Or we may get what's called a swing shift. And we have to sit in our car for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, 9 hours, if we've got a car, some people don't, in the parking lot, maybe with the air conditioning on, if it's hot out or in the extreme cold, the heat, and hopefully sleep in our car, and then get back on one of these buses and come back and drive 100 people on these buses or 1,000 people on the train with a smile on our face. And we do, amazingly. And then after that, we've been here 13 hours or perhaps more, we have to drive back home, get our uniform off, sleep a couple hours, and then come back to do it the next day. That is superhuman. At a certain point, that's going to lead to major health problems and also, of course, danger to the public.
So generally, when it comes to working at the CTA, you come in as a customer service assistant or a part-time bus operator. Then while you're doing customer assistant, you apply for flagman. And flagman, the nice thing about that arrangement is you start out dealing with the customers, learning the fare system and dealing with emergencies, and then you go on the right-of-way. So as a flagman, your job is to protect workers who are on or near the railroad tracks or the stations. And there's various processes that we follow to ensure that they don't get run over by the train or the train doesn't run over their tools. And that is a very safety-sensitive job. And many of us, in fact, all of us that go to do that job are turned over quickly to go into train operation. And if we do so safely and we keep a safe record, we can generally be full-time. And it may take 2 years to do that. But the unfortunate aspect in our agreement that we need to work on and update is that none of the flagmen are staying. There's no flagman that stays, so your experience goes with you. So we have a few flagmen that were able to stay in an earlier part of the agreement, in an earlier incarnation, but they're moving on. They're retiring or they move on to other jobs, other departments. But their knowledge and their experience goes with them. So it is a benefit to be able to allow people to be full-time permanent flagmen, and that experience will stay, and that will actually make the work site more safe, and that will lessen the delays for the riders. I love doing the work, especially working with the people, the customers, the riders. When I was flagging on the right-of-way, I enjoyed making sure we set up our slow zones properly. It was kind of annoying to some people, but you know what? When I was working, I made sure everybody was safe. And that's what I love about having a union job is, we can be proud to make sure safety is first, and safety for us safety for the riders, the stakeholders, you could say, and our coworkers. I've always enjoyed dealing with our customers and helping solve their problems.